Brilliant. And yeah, for those of you who've just joined, do say hello in the chat where you're from. It'd be great to hear from you. And in terms of this session, we've got Karen Morrall and Frances West, who very kindly agreed to join us today. We're delighted to have them with us. They've got so many interesting things and some scary things, of course, that they're going to be sharing with us, plus some top tips as well. So I'm really excited about this session. So just as a quick intro for each of them, we've got Karen, who's experienced finance director, held numerous roles in as a director in technology businesses with big data, cybersecurity, and digital forensics. And Karen is CEO of Lockdown Cybersecurity, and she sees cybersecurity through a different lens, through the eyes of a finance director rather than a cyber expert. And she's been working on that perfect methodology for cyber, linking up academia and cyber. So really great to have Karen with us today. And we've also got Frances with us, Frances West, who's CEO of Security Everywhere. So hello to Frances. He's a trusted leader and speaker in cybersecurity. And just last week when we were catching up, Frances mentioned you'd counted how many times you've talked on cybersecurity since lockdown. Did I get it right? Was it 350, did you say?
I'll stop counting at 300.
Lots and lots. So we have
This is my
lots of
fourth one
experience.
in 2 weeks.
Wow, yes, it's all go. So thank you so much for joining us, and both of you, we really appreciate it. And Francis has got a mission. He wants everyone to be cyber safe and never stop educating people about cybercrime. And for thrills, he's mentioned he loves go-karting, and for pleasure, a bottle of South African wine as nice as an accompaniment. So today, I'm going to sit back and listen as Karen and Francis are going to discuss cyber, share the story, share some tips, and I'll be on hand to with any questions. Any questions as you go along, please do put them in the chat, and I'll help make sure we get those answered, and we'll wrap up with any questions as well at the end if there's any that we haven't yet covered. So yeah, everyone, please keep involved, share any thoughts and anything in the chat. That would be brilliant. And then meanwhile, I'll hand over Karen to get started.
Thank you so much, Louisa and Amy and First Intuition for this great opportunity to join you today. And thank you all for attending. So why should we be considering cybersecurity? I think that's really the main thrust of today. So I thought, well, let's cover a few things, but as Louisa said, let's try and make this as interactive as possible. So if you've got questions, please put them in the chat and we'll answer them as much as we can throughout. And if not, we'll take them at the end. So cybersecurity is a key business risk we all face. And it's a board responsibility, and they need to take ownership of what cyber risk actually is. It's so important to understand the threats that we face in our organizations and what that attack surface, the types of attacks that people and criminals can use against us. If we don't understand how we can be attacked, how can we properly defend ourselves? I think in a post-COVID landscape, in a hybrid working environment, we're all really, under attack both at home and at work. The lines have been really blurred between the two, and we need to be secure in our home working environments, out of office environments, as well as at work. The cyber threats that we face, sadly, are really significant and persistent. And just following on from what Amy said, every day in the press we see new ones. Those are only the ones that are reported. Sadly, we're seeing all too often more and more, and lots aren't being reported. This problem isn't going away, and we need to get to terms with it. We need to understand what actions to take to be proactive and not be reactive to this, and how we manage cyber risk. As accountants, we're used to the word risk. We're used to the words fraud. This is not different to anything in our last, since we've been in existence. But cyber risk, we just need to understand what that means so we can do the right things. There isn't a silver bullet. There isn't a magic wand here, in that we can guarantee that what we do and put in place will protect us. Sadly, we can do a lot of things, and we can still suffer an incident. And it's not if, but when we will suffer a cyber incident. But knowing, what you've got in place, how you can enhance and layer cybersecurity across your organizations, how you can make it more difficult for criminals to get in, will make it harder for them to get in. And knowing how to bounce back following an incident, that's called cyber resilience, and we'll touch on that in a bit later. So why should we be looking at this? Well, it's a key business risk, but also the cost of an incident can be significant. And I think it's worth sharing what some of those costs can be. This isn't an exhaustive list. This is just a high level list of some of the costs associated with a cyber incident. We've got primary costs and we've got secondary costs. The inability to have systems available to operate causes us disruption to our businesses. It can stop our revenue generating activities. It can slow us down. It can cause downtime. We've got a divergence of internal people then not doing their day jobs, but focusing on, the fire that's happening and reconstructing operations so we can restore to normal availability of services. There's an opportunity cost associated with that. We'll have legal ramifications from an incident. There could be regulatory fines. If we claim off insurance premiums, premiums could go up as a result, let alone all the remediation costs. And remediation costs and resources are at a premium if you haven't got your plans in place before, got retainers in place and know who's going to do what when. But I think the secondary costs of a cyber incident can't be underestimated. The emotional drain that the team would feel for dealing with an incident is massive. The loss of control, as accountants, we like to be in control. The loss of control, your reputational damage, the loss of trust, the negative PR we would suffer, all needs to be considered. And then obviously, if data is lost, of which we've said, all too often data is lost, we face group litigation claims, which could be huge sums of money. So some statistics I thought I would share with you on cybercrime. A DSIT, the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, part of the government, send out a cybersecurity breach survey every year. The recent one for 2024 shows is available on the internet. The link is below and shown. But these are reported incidents in the last 12 months of when they did the report. So these statistics are actually much higher in reality because not all incidents are reported. This is showing that 50% of businesses have either reported suffering a breach or attack in the last 12 months, and nearly a third of charities. If we move to medium and large size businesses and larger charities, these percentages are much higher. In this breach survey, it also looks at different attack types that are out there, and phishing attacks seems to be the most common by far. It was reported in the survey to be 84% for businesses, but I think from Francis and my experience, this is a much higher number, over in the 90s. Some reports say as much as like 94% of attacks now come through email. So understanding what phishing is and doing what you can to protect yourself is really, really important. And Francis and I will share some great things as we move on through these through the presentation. Deploying security monitoring tools is also reported in the report. And so if you haven't got those in place, understanding what's coming in and out of your perimeter fence is really, really helpful. So why do cyber criminals and threat actors, as we call them, want to have our personal data and our organizational data? Well, for personal data, they want to commit identity fraud. They want to impersonate who we are for whatever need that they may be. And we're all seeing too often, romance fraud, where people are coerced and, then asked to send money or give people money. Too often people are falling foul to those types of scams. From an organizational perspective, extortion, data theft, IP theft, it's they want to get our data, they want to cause us disruption, they want to extort us, they have all sorts of motives. But I think what I would share with you is that criminals don't often just enter our technology stacks and just say, hi, I'm here, I'm going to ask for a ransom, or I'm going to make you aware. They often sit undetected in our systems, and that can be on average for as long as 207 days. I came across one recently and it was 10 years. So these are, 207 days isn't the most by far. But they can be learning, watching, corrupting, exfiltrating what we do to cause us as much pain as possible when they trigger and become awake to us. So cyber fraud now accounts for the most frequent type of attack in the UK, and that's really why we need to be awake to this. So why are accountants targeted? Well, as accountants, we often have access to a lot of sensitive, confidential data and information about the companies and the organizations in which we work. If you think about it, you know, our sales ledger contains all our customer information. Is that valuable in the wrong hands? Absolutely. Our pricing information, we pay for things, how we pay for things, you know, bank details, customers' bank details, suppliers' bank details, staff bank details, personal information about our people, their names, address, going back to, you know, impersonation type reasons. The data and confidential information and system, the data and information we hold in our systems goes beyond what we hold in our accounting systems. If you think of our business plans, our strategy documents, our IT roadmaps, our R&D, you know, recipes, formulas, things that you would not want to leave your business. Okay, this is what criminals are after. So strangely, as accountants, we're used to valuing assets on the balance sheet, you know, from intangible assets, fixed assets, current assets. But the digital assets that criminals want are not valued on our balance sheets. Yet this has a huge value in the criminal market, in the dark web. And we'll come onto the dark web a bit later to give you more information on what that is. But I think in any business you work in, if you can identify what your most important data and information is, that's your crown jewels, and really focus on protecting those within your systems, applications, software, and ring fence those as much as you can. I think what would be good is to sort of, you know, Amy touched on some recent incidents there about Ticketmaster, you know, the NHS and others. So what I'd like to do is just go in a bit more detail, and Francis is going to chip in with some of these with me. But some of the phishing cases that I've seen and refer to, one is FatFace. And I think FatFace during COVID is a retail organisation. We may be aware they sell clothing, they sell it online, and they sell it through retail stores, physically in stores. And they were attacked through a phishing email. And it caused a ransomware attack during COVID. What was really interesting is that these gangs are highly sophisticated sometimes, and they'd actually gone and done reconnaissance and looked at the accounts of FatFace. They even found their insurance documents before they became visible to FatFace to see that the insurance amounts that were covered for ransomware, for ransom type attacks, and they still extorted them for several £million. But it was really interesting that they'd got hold of, the criminals had got hold of their insurance documents. So when we go back to what crown jewels are, I would be protecting those insurance documents and treating those as a crown jewel. Another sad one is Knights of Old. This is a logistics firm. This is a company that's been going for 150 years. It had 750 staff. It had a fleet of vehicles, logistics, and sadly they suffered a phishing attack, which caused them the loss of their business. This actually caused not just a financial or disruption to their business, it was an extinction event because they couldn't then bounce back. They couldn't, following the phishing incident and the downtime, they couldn't secure finance to carry on. That happened in September last year. We also see social engineering, you know, people looking at social engineering ways and social media ways of trying to get to us. LinkedIn is one of the most targeted areas at the moment for crime. So just be aware that they're using a lot of bots. They're trying to build relationships with you in your personal way through LinkedIn, and then into transferring those conversations into the business world to often cause harm. And system vulnerabilities, domain misconfigurations also being targeted. Francis, can I hand over to you? Do you want to give us a bit of insights as to how criminals are actually targeting us in these ways?
Oh, We've only got half an hour. You know, I could talk about this for 4 hours non-stop. But thank you very much, Karen. Again, guys, just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody for allowing us to be here today. We eat, sleep, and breathe this all day long, and we help so many companies, sadly, mostly after they've suffered an attack. And like Karen said just now, most of the attacks come in by email. And I wanted to share a quick story. I think it was it was a 30-user accountancy firm beginning this year fell for an invoice scam, and the lady who's head of the finance section or the finance team within the business paid an invoice to the value of £47,000 straight into the hacker's bank account. Now, the bank said tough because you pressed the pay now button, but Emma, that's her name, I hope she's not on the call today, you know, took it so personally. She's been with the business when they just started out. And, you know, she felt so personal responsible for losing that money to the business that she's now been off. What are we now in June? When I last spoke to the business owner, I think it was just before the end of May, she still hasn't come back to work. You know, which is really, really sad. And when I spoke to the business owner, he wanted to sack her. And I'm like, you can't do that. He said, why? I said, for 2 reasons. I said, number one, you had no training in place to make sure that when she received that change of payment details in that invoice, that there was a proper follow-up procedure. We should be pick the phone up and phone the number that's on the website, not that's at the bottom of the email, because that's easily hackable. But number 2, you had no email security in place, because if you did, that email would have never, ever, ever got into the inbox in the first place. So, I mean, this is just one case, Karen, that we see, but we see so many where, again, another case here, just in Watford, down the road from us, where this client of ours now, they're a big investment company, about 45 staff, you know, doing about 20, 30 million. And their accountant was hacked. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, he gets an email from his account to say, here's your monthly management accounts. He clicked on the PDF. The PDF opened, and within seconds, every single one of his customers received an email, because it just went and scanned through all their contacts database with another infected link. You know, so it all happens. And again, the same reason why, well, now they're a client, why that got through is, number one, they had no email security, and the computer security that they had on their computer that this owner opened up just completely didn't even see the attack happen. And that's why a lot of the known antivirus solutions today cannot detect unknown threats. And that's why so many people are getting done. But I hope that gives you a quick two examples there, Karen.
Thank you so much, Francis. I think it's worth just touching on domain misconfiguration.
Oh,
because we're seeing a lot, aren't we, of crime gangs, particularly around this area.
Okay, so I'm going to put a link in the chat. Don't look at it just yet. Let me tell you what's going on here. So whenever you set up an email domain, you are supposed to set up what we call 3 email security records. You should set up the DMARC, the DKIM, SPF. And if you click on that link in a minute, or not now, even after the session, you can watch a little video that puts this in very simple terms that even a non-technical person can understand. But the moment you don't configure these records, guess what? I can send you, and I'm not joking, I can send you an email from our CyberDuck. I can send you an email from Donald Duck at your domain name to yourself. Now, what does that mean? That means that I can impersonate the owner, I can impersonate anybody in your business, and therefore send an email with an attachment or something will get straight through to your customers or your suppliers. And I tell you, Karen, out of every 100 companies, accountants that we test, maybe 2 of them will have this in place. So that's the first reason why you need to fix this as soon as possible. The second reason is because of deliverability. So what happened was in February time, if you are sending mass emails to people on the planet, as of beginning of Feb, your emails will simply not even be delivered, especially when you email to Gmail accounts or Yahoo accounts, and all the other email providers are now going to join that kind of, let's call it that group, which I think is a brilliant thing. So it's not even going to hit your spam folder. It's just going to go straight, it'll just be disappearing. So imagine if you're doing a lot of marketing, or you're sending your statements or invoice or words, you're sending quotes, and the stuff doesn't get into your intended inbox. You know, so there's multiple reasons to fix this. So I beg everybody, please look into this and get this fixed like yesterday.
And it's not an expensive thing to fix, right, Francis? It's just
Not at all.
things in the right way.
It takes time, and also
Yeah.
you need to monitor it, Karen, because
Yeah.
fixing it is one thing, but then you need to monitor it, because if you don't monitor it, things can change, and you need a proper monitoring system to do this.
Yeah, I think all too often we think with cybersecurity you have to spend lots of money, and actually
Not at all.
you just need to know what to do and what to do in what order. It doesn't have to be expensive. I think it's worth also highlighting supply chain risk, because you're only as good as your weakest link. Amy referred to the NHS incident that happened recently. That was to do through a vulnerability in the IT supply chain, a partner that they were using. So whoever you're connecting and sharing information with through your IT estate, really try and understand what their cyber posture is. How secure are they? Because by being linked to them, you're at risk too. So there is a thing called supply chain assurance, and we can help with that. If you haven't looked at understanding the security of the people in your supply chain, we can help.
Can I just add to that, please, Karen? Because I think this is if you rewind, just go back to the previous slide. We all part of the supply chain, whether we an accountancy firm with one person or 50 or 500 people, and you have so much personal information about your customers. And if you get compromised for whatever reason, that will simply spread to every single one of your customers. And therefore, they will simply stop using you, if not sue you. So for anybody that's part, and you know, we had another case recently where the accountants, you know, that the company does all the merchandise, you know, the cups and the pens, they were compromised. So of course that came straight into the accountant, and the accountant was compromised. And again, that should have never happened. But my point is that any business, so when you as an accountant, every one of your customers is part of the supply chain, because there's communication backwards and forwards. So when you start working with people, you need to check them out. Have a look at what they've got in place, because it's going to become law.
Thank you, Francis. Another rife thing that we're seeing is a huge increase in ransomware attacks. Okay, so I think, apologies if you already know what ransomware is, but I just thought I would share with you. This is the lockdown definition of what ransomware is. And, you know, it's a piece of malicious software that renders systems and data inoperable. Or, you know, ransomware can go in, it can have three-pronged approach. It can have a reconnaissance phase where it's in discovery. We talked about criminals sitting in systems for a long time watching. It can lift data out of our systems and exfiltrate it. I think that's really scary for accountants, because we rely on that data in our systems for data integrity. But it can then encrypt data and make it so it's frozen and we can't access it. Often they ask for money in exchange for a decryption key, but guess what? They don't always give you the decryption key. You know, so it's worth touching on what ransomware is. There are a lot of gangs that are doing ransomware. It's now rife. It's more present now than it has ever been. Some are linked to states, some are not. The rise of the ransomware gangs, well, what's scary is you've actually got, we hear of software as a service. There's something called ransomware as a service. So even if you aren't proficient in ransomware, you can buy the service from these gangs, and you can buy it as cheap as $100 to get started with this, and potentially, you know, cause attacks that could ask for ransoms that go into thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. So I just thought it was worth, you know, highlighting, you know, around ransomware. Are you covered for ransom payments? Would you pay a ransom? You know, it's not illegal to pay a ransom, but we wouldn't advocate, you know, supporting and promoting paying of ransoms to pay criminals. That's not what we would ever do. some insurers insure it, others don't. So I think having an ethical discussion within your organization on what your position is as regards ransom payments is really, really important. Did you want to chip in there anything, Francis, on ransomware?
Absolutely. Again, I always, when I speak to people, I say, what is the two things that's going to make your business stop? One, as we know, accountants like to say that, is when you run out of money. The second one is when you have a ransom attack, because when you, and again, we've seen this recently, even people using Office 365, where somebody logged on to one of their accounts, which didn't enable that person, dare I say, in India, doesn't matter which country, but this case was from India, and they synchronized all the files in OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams onto the local machine, then applied the ransom attack. That encryption of all the files then went back onto 365 and then back down to every other connected computer that was also logging on as part of the business. Game over. And then when they went to check for backups, and I think this is such an important point, they found out that no, they had no backups. Because a lot of people think because their data is sitting in Office 365 or it's sitting with Google, that it's backed up. No, it's not backed up. You need to have a separate backup solution, because that's your last line of defense. Because if you can't pay the ransom, or you shouldn't, then the only way to recover is from a backup. Now, the thing is about backups is that, how do you know that backups, like we said earlier, doesn't already contain the attack? So when you're making backups, you need to make very sure that the backup is actually clean in the first place. So I was just on a meeting this morning, over an hour, with the Resilience Center, the Eastern Cyber Resilience Center. And one of those things they said now, that if a company pays the ransom, they are 80% more likely to be attacked again within 2 years.
That's scary, isn't it? Absolutely scary. Yeah.
So my advice is make sure you never get it in the first place.
Yeah. I think something that I wanted to point out at the end of this slide is about, threats don't always come from outside. There can be the insider threat too. And so we're used to fraud and detecting fraud in our businesses. It's no different. Cyber fraud can happen in a business as well as coming from outside. So just to make you aware of that. So what can we do to protect ourselves? Okay, well, there's a lot we can do to protect ourselves. And so a really good starting point is if you think about phishing as being one of the main areas, we've said, attack types, so we've seen it from the government breach survey, we've referred to it several times, then making sure that your staff are trained and have security awareness training in place regularly, so that they know what to look out for, what to watch out for, what are the red flags. Yeah. And so it's less likely, if you give them the right training on a continuous basis, and you do automated phishing tests, automated phishing simulations, I would advocate on a monthly basis, then staff are going to be not your weakest link, but you can turn them into a strong human firewall. And that can come at a very, very low cost compared to the cost we went back to of what an incident can be. The return on investment, the cost benefit is huge by just training your staff and layering that staff. If your board doesn't understand what cybersecurity is, or you don't have the skills in your organization, then you need to get the expertise in place to help you. Yeah, there are people that can help, like Francis and ourselves and many others. Another thing you can do is understand your current cyber posture, your current cyber position. If you don't know what you've got in place for a current state and where the gaps are and what you need to fix in what order and what you need to spend in order to get there, that's no visibility of what you're doing. You're leaving yourself exposed. So benchmarking using experts to a recognized cyber framework, be it NIST, ISO 27001, CAF, there are many out there. I would highly recommend that you look at what best practice said and see where you are against it, and put a live improvement plan in place with budget and deadlines on it that's monitored. Obtaining certifications like Cyber Essentials Plus is a really good start point. Francis, do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cyber Essentials, I cannot recommend it highly enough. to businesses. It doesn't matter what your size, especially the smaller ones though. Why? Because imagine you take your car for MOT once a year, and they look over the car, they make sure everything is fine, and if you're lucky, you pass, and that's fine. The problem with that is it's a once a year exercise. However, it gets you into the right mindset. It gets you to think cyber. It makes you think about fraud and attacks. And they work on 5 key areas. And those 5 keys, I'll put a link on the chat later. We help a lot of clients with their Cyber Essentials accreditation. But for me, you then, when you certify, because there's 2 versions. So you've got the Essentials, which is kind of a self-ticking exercise. It's about 350, 400 pounds to do. And then you've got Cyber Essentials Plus, where somebody physically comes to your office, or they do it remotely and checks your answers and tests your machines for the answers. And that's about 1,500 pounds to do. So coming back to the Cyber Essentials, once you've certified, which is once a year, you get a certification logo, which I highly recommend that you put that on the bottom of your emails. You put it, on all your literature, on your website. Why? Because customers are going to start asking you. We deal a lot also in the recruitment sector, where a lot of people can't get onto certain frameworks unless they've done their Cyber Essentials accreditation, which I think is brilliant. The other thing you're going to see soon is that if you want to take out cyber insurance, the insurance company is going to demand from you to have your Cyber Essentials accreditation. So I think all round, this is such a great thing to do, because it proves not only to yourself and your internal team, but it proves to your customers that you're taking their data seriously.
And the other thing that I would always highly recommend is that you have an instant response plan. But going back to the outset of what we started with, it's not if, but when you suffer an attack, knowing what to do. And I'll touch, if we have time, on more considerations around an instant response plan. But have one, make sure it's live, make sure it's kept up to date, make sure you practice it, make sure it's not just sat on the system that you can't get access to it when the system is down and unavailable. Yeah. Cyber resilience, the ability to bounce back faster, is so important to any business or organization. Francis, I think it's worth giving some tips, around, mobile phone security, for example. We talk often about computer security, email security, but what about phone security?
Oh, I tell you what. Sorry, before we do this, which I'll do with pleasure, just go back one slide, because there's one thing that we didn't talk about, and that I call it the email bouncer. We've heard several times today that 94% of attacks coming by email. And most people don't know that there's actually a solution or multiple solutions out there to fix this problem. Because I think it's really wrong for business owners to make their staff responsible for deciding whether this email sitting in the inbox, it contains, let's call it a landmine or not. That will take out the entire business. The way we deal with this, we simply remove any attacks from the inbox. And that's why I call it email bouncer. You better have a very big email bouncer sitting in front of your Office 365 or Google Workspaces, because then you don't have to worry about this stuff. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So coming back, so now let's do some, I can talk about practical tips forever, but let's start with the SIM. Now I'm going to tell you a story, which is a case, which is a true story that happened only a month or 2 ago. This lady went to the gym, and she put her phone in the locker, and of course next to her wallet, and she took a water bottle and went to do a spin class. And when she came back, both were gone. Now the thing is, when she finally managed to get home, she logged on and realized that somebody has already spent £40,000 using her debit card in what's the place called, Westfield, on Mac equipment. Now she's obviously had a lot of money in her account. But let me tell you what happened. When they got her phone, they simply took out the SIM, the SIM that's sitting in the phone, and they put it into another mobile phone. Then, and this is why people talk to me about two-factor and multi-factor authentication. And I always advise never to use the text methods compared to using an app like Authenticator or a good password manager. So what happened then was they looked in her wallet, of course, and they did all of this in half an hour. Saw that she uses not Barclays, Lloyd's. Downloaded the Lloyd's account and app onto the phone that had her SIM. All of a sudden it says, okay, we need to verify who you are. We're going to send you the PIN, which went back to the SIM. They put it in, they got into a Lloyd's account. Now, then of course they've got the debit card and they clicked on the app and go reveal PIN. So they got the PIN for the debit card. Okay. All of this could have been avoided if only she had a SIM PIN turned on. And I bet you that most people on this call today have never heard of this. And I'm going to tell you the process, but please don't do it now, because believe me, if you get this process wrong, you're going to brick your phone and you're going to say, this mad South African on the call today, he told me to turn on my SIM PIN and now I can't even use my phone.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I know this is because it happened to me, because I didn't listen to properly when I did this the first time. So what happens is when you, even this works with the eSIM as well. So when you go into, for instance, if we just use an example, I don't know how many people have got iPhones on them right now, but if you pick up your iPhone right now and you go into settings, I'll talk you through the process. And then you go down to mobile service, and then you go down to SIM PIN. Don't touch it, please. Just for interest sake, everybody that's on the call right now, in the chat, can you tell me whether you've got this turned on, yes or no? Just put that in the chat. So we've got one no by Kelly, no Ali, Sandra. Look at this. No, Louisa, no, no. Ah, we've got Kirsty with the yes. That's great. Graham, no. Thank you for being so honest. So you can now see that if I want to get anything on your phone, all I need to do is take your SIM out and put another phone. So now I'm going to tell you the process of fixing this, but please don't do it now, because I'm going to share with you all the codes you're going to need in a minute. The process of doing this, and you've got to do this slowly. I'm warning you again. Do you see the red flag? Is that first you turn it on. Don't do it now. Then you need the default SIM PIN for your provider. So in other words, for O2, it's like 4 zeros, and for Vodafone, it's something else. So once you've turned it on, now you've turned it on, but now it's still setting to the default SIM, which of course you can find on the internet. So any hacker can get that anyway. And now you go back and you say, change SIM. At this point, you put in the default SIM PIN again, and then the second part to this process is you then put in your code, which is a 4-digit code. And trust me, you never want to lose that code, because whenever your phone runs out of power, or if you reboot your phone, or you do a big update, it's going to ask you for that SIM PIN. But this is the most easy, or the best way ever, that you can make sure that nobody clones your SIM or steals your phone, or and then be able to get into all your banking accounts. It is that simple.
Francis, I'm going to stop there, because we could talk, couldn't we, for hours about this stuff. But I think everyone could look at doing this. If you want more help and advice, Francis will send his contact details. But actually, things with WhatsApp, we can add multi-factor verification, authentication on that too. And I think in our experience, not many people are aware of that. What I also wanted to do was point to the National Cybersecurity Centre website for free information on lots of things that you can do that don't cost anything.
Shall we? Sorry, Karen, I think this is such an important point. Let's quickly cover WhatsApp, because so many attacks are coming through WhatsApp now. And again, when I speak to accountants, they're sending, they're getting sometimes pay slips through, or they're getting proof of identity through on WhatsApp. And let's do it. Can everybody get your phone out? And I want you to open up WhatsApp. And I want you to go in settings. Once you go into settings, I want you to go to account. Once you're into account, go to two-step verification and tell me honestly, yes or no, in the chat whether you've got this turned on. Look at this. No, 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 no. Apart from Keely. So, ladies and gents, how would you feel if I got into your WhatsApp account and I read every single message that you've ever, including your kids and your parents, and I could see every photo that you've ever posted? This takes seconds to turn on, but there's another way you can protect your WhatsApp account. So if you go back one step, where you had the account, if you go down to privacy, and you go down to app lock, please turn this on. Set it to immediately. Why? Because every time you open WhatsApp, it'll prompt for your Face ID or fingerprint. And this is the way you fix WhatsApp immediately within 1 minute. And all I ask everybody on this call today, or even if you listen to this back, please share this with 10 other people and ask those 10 people to share it with 10 other people. This is how easily we can fix the security on WhatsApp.
Thank you so much, Francis. I think that's real food for thought. The other thing I wanted to share with you is the use of open source intelligence. Often when we look at cybersecurity, we look from the inside out, but what's really important is to try and look at what's on the outside in. And all too often, intelligence isn't used in companies as part of their cybersecurity. Intelligence can tell us often what a hacker or a cyber criminal can see from the outside, where we're vulnerable, where our assets are exposed or not misconfigured. We talked about DMARC, DKIN, SPF. If we know from the outside that these are not configured correctly, then and the intelligence is showing those types of vulnerabilities, then we know what to fix. So looking at breach credentials, if attacks have already happened, what information is us outside of our businesses on the dark web. We can get these sorts of intelligence tools can give us ratings. They could be out of 100, they could be out of 1,000, and it can tell us at a particular point in time what sort of position we're at from the outside, what sort of threat landscapes look like for criminals that want to get into our business. We sell one, sorry, I'll just go back. We sell one and it uses a passive search of just your domain name. So by just putting your domain name in, we can tell what internet facing assets you have, what IP addresses you have as a business, what routes attackers can potentially take to get into your business. So if we know this intelligence, we can do something about it. So the power of looking from the outside in as well as the inside out, I think is something we all need to know is available to us. But we've got to be guarded, right? Because the dark web and the deep dark web is there. It's layers of the internet. And we've got to be careful how we search it and who we use to search it. So, but I just wanted to ask people, right, the deep and the dark web, how big do you think it is? Could you just put it in the chat function? Do you think, and Francis, can you just monitor this? Do you think it's 50 times smaller than the internet? Do you think it's roughly the same? Do you think it's 200 times larger than the internet or 400 times larger than the internet? This is the marketplace of criminals. This is the stuff where they're speaking, they're selling stuff. If you pay a ransom, sometimes you can go on a suckers list that, this company's paid, use them, go and approach them. These are conversations of criminals. What are we seeing, Francis, from the chat?
Yeah, it's varied. B, C, infinite.
Okay.
400 times larger.
Yeah. The actual answer.
So I would say there's probably mostly D.
Yeah. And that is the answer. It's over 400 times larger than the internet. And I think that's really, really, if you think how vast the internet is, and then you think that the deep and the dark web is 400 times bigger than the internet, that's the size of crime. And this is growing every day. And I think this slide is useful to see because this is showing you some of the things that are on the dark web and breached records. Social security numbers, credit card details, email passwords, breach credentials, files. This stuff is real, and this is the ground of criminals. What I would say, sorry, just to go back, and I'm conscious of time because we're nearly there. But if you're going to look at intelligence, make sure that you use the right professionals to do it. Don't access yourself. They will have the right skills and expertise if you use the right people to scrape and interrogate information for you. The deep dark web uses things like WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord. You've got to be aware of that. And there's over 200 billion data points to be searched. So it's incredibly powerful if used in the right way by the right people. I just wanted to touch on the power.
Sorry, Karen, could we just give people a quick tip here? I've just posted a link that I've been using for years and years. It's called haveibeenpawned.com. So if you go to that website and you put in your email address and do the same for your children, for your colleagues, and you can see how many times your email address has been compromised and now for sale on the dark web by LinkedIn, by Zoom, by Amazon, by you name it. But there's a really good feature. If you look at the top of that website, there's a section called Notify Me. If you put your email address in there, it will notify you straight away if your data becomes for sale for, one of the companies we've already mentioned earlier. So please do this, not only for yourself, but like I said, like for your whole family and all your colleagues.
Yeah. I think we're probably out of time. So if you do need to go, then please leave. We're not holding you to, but if you would like to stay, I'm happy to carry on. Are you, Francis?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So please
Great.
don't
Thank you
feel
very much,
obliged to
Karen,
stay.
Francis. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so I appreciate it's a 45-minute session. So if you do need to drop off, we totally understand. But if you can stay around for a little bit longer, that would be fantastic. And I think we have got one question we can answer shortly as well.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries. Okay, so we'll just carry on for a few more minutes and we will go to the chat function then and answer a few questions for those that want to stay in the room. So cyber insurance, okay, I don't know how many people in the room have got cyber insurance in place, but what I see is that there aren't enough businesses and organizations having it in place. Why should we consider cyber insurance? Well, you need to understand as a business or an organization what your risk tolerance is to cybercrime. And if you how much are you prepared to pay from the funds that you have in a business to put right something following an incident, to do the remediation costs, to do the forensics, to be able to put yourself back into a position where you can continue to operate and bounce back? If you haven't got enough resources or finances in place, then cyber insurance is the ability to provide external professionals with the experience, with the resources to help you bounce back faster. And so they won't provide all the skills, but a combination of finding out what they do cover and what they don't, what skills they will provide and what they won't, and having a policy in place and knowing what to do in what order and who to report incidents to and by when and within what time frame. And like we said before, do you pay a ransom play or not? Having a ransom ethical debate is not the time when the fire's going on. And the people that deal with the initial response are different. The firefighters are different to the construction people that reconstruct your business back. So I just wanted to give the importance of cyber insurance, I would say, is part of any good a requisite of any good cyber strategy. Often insurance requires to have security awareness training in place and some sort of vulnerability monitoring scanning in place too. So I think we've covered instant response plans, and Francis has talked about backups and restoring from backups. Francis, do you want to, about mobile phones? We've talked about that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, we dealt with a case not so long ago, a young gentleman, and he works for a law firm, and it's 11 o'clock at night, Saturday evening, standing at Piccadilly Circus tube station, and they came past and snatched his phone. There was a big article about this type of theft on BBC News on Saturday morning. A phone is now being snatched every 10 minutes in the UK. So, and if you think about your phone, I say to people, give me your phone for half an hour. No, I'm not. I'm like, no, give it to me for half an hour. So, and this is why there are a few key things. We've already spoken about WhatsApp because there's so much personal information there. Another thing you can do is set your phone to the lowest timeout for the screen to lock. On an iPhone, minimum is 30 seconds. On a non-iPhone, I think it's about 10 seconds. We've spoken about the SIM pin. You make sure that you have another device, for instance, especially again on iPhone and Android, where you can get to quickly. Here's another top tip. Imagine your phone just got stolen the second ago. Who will you phone? Because I'm ashamed to tell you, I do not know my wife's mobile number. So I've now written a number down on a piece of paper and I put it in my wallet, because I'm like, if somebody stole my phone, I'll have to phone her, go to a shop, get this piece of paper out, phone and say, please go onto what do you call it, onto Apple, and lock my phone down. So, you know, there's so many little things you can do. And when it says, please update the phone, always update the phone. But the main thing is having those layers of security on your phone, so that if they grab your phone or if you lose your phone, at least you don't have to worry about the consequences.
Thank you so much, Francis. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is AI developments affecting cyber risk and cyber security. Francis, do you want to give a bit of heads up on this? I know you
Wow,
did speak
okay.
about this the other day.
I did a whole one thing I would like to mention here is every first Thursday of the month between 12 and 1, we actually do a LinkedIn live session about different topics in cyber. And last Thursday, our topic. So if you go to our Security Everywhere page on LinkedIn, you'll see all the previous recordings. So please go and listen back to them. A lot of stuff around child online safety as well. But last week was all about AI. Now, I'm gonna if I'm going to tell you two things about this now. The first thing is about what is the biggest problem for a hacker or scammer. And I'll tell you what the biggest problem is. It's resource. They have only a finite amount of people that they can employ in North Korea or wherever to train people up to hack and scam you. Now that AI has kicked in, there's a new solution that came out in January called Worm GTP. You've heard of ChatGPT? There's a Worm GPT that started in Australia, that they can now automate an attack in seconds instead of minutes or hours. But that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. The second thing is a bit more concerning, and that is about how many parents that are on the session today are posting information about their children on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I'm sorry, not LinkedIn, but all the other social media. I've just posted a link on for everybody to see here. And believe me, if you watch this video as a parent, you'll think again when you post anything online, because what they've done is they've used AI to capture information about that child. And the stuff that happens, just watch the video. That's all I say. So every time you click on a link, every time you like a Facebook group, let's say you like a group called Barclays Bank, immediately the AI bots now know that you bank with Barclays, or the chances are very high. So the point that I'm making here is with the AI, which is, there's a lot of good things, but there's a lot of bad things, and it's just speeding up the process of attack.
Yeah, so I think AI is there for great opportunity for digital transformations, but we've got to be aware that we've got to still keep cybersecurity safe, right? We've still got to do the security implications of AI need to be really considered. But there is a world where AI needs to be used to combat against AI threats. And it's going to be the quantum, isn't it? The power of the quantum as we move forward.
Yeah.
I think what I wanted to sort of end with is what I typically start with when I go in and speak with businesses. And we often say, do you understand what cyber risk is? And hopefully today, after this presentation, you understand a bit more about what cyber risk is. But if you don't, and you can't answer the other questions, how much cyber risk are you currently holding in your organizations right now? Could you tell me in monetary terms the extent of the cyber risk that you're currently holding? And have you got a live improvement plan in place? What does it look like? What are the priorities? Are criminals already in your systems? We talked about that 207 days, you know, how do you know if they're there or not? If you can't answer these questions, between lockdown cybersecurity and security everywhere, Francis and my company, you know, our companies, we can really help you. And we can point you in directions of free services, you know, cheaper services, and really highly complex services too. So I wanted to thank you so much for attending, first of all, and we're going to answer some questions, aren't we, Francis?
Yeah, so the first one, which I thought is a really good question, because I get asked this a lot. What are the governments doing about this? Do you want to answer it, Karen, or should I?
No, you go ahead and I'll chip in after. Yeah.
So I don't know if Kelly is still on the call. Kelly, I personally serve on 7 security panels, including advisory to the Home Office and working with multiple cyber resilience centers and cyber police units around the country. And believe me, there's a lot being done. You know, you hear about all the attacks. I mean, with all the work that they're doing, they probably stripping out or preventing about 60% of attacks every single day or week or month. And even after that, the rest that's left is still making up, you know, the largest portion of all attacks and fraud in the UK and worldwide for that matter. So they are trying their best and they're doing a lot of different stuff. Thanks, Kelly. And this is why we do what we do, Karen and I, because, you know, they can only do their bit, but then businesses needs to take responsibility. And the other thing for me is about that I wanted to share is please don't make your IT person or IT company or IT department responsible for cyber protection. You need to speak to specialists, please, because they are good at IT. But to come back to your question, yes, the government is doing a lot. I mean, if you look at all the new work that's going on with action fraud, and one section we didn't cover today, but we'll do that another time, Karen, is how to report cybercrime and what's the effect, and is it worth reporting? 100% yes. Because I've got a bit of a sick humor. Whenever I get scam calls, my record is 17 minutes to keep them on the phone, because I know the longer I can keep a scammer on the phone, the less likely they'll be phoning somebody else who's not aware. And I ask everybody to do the same. It's great fun, but it's...
Yeah. There's been a report issued this month, and it was originally a report by the government released in February, and it's about a cybersecurity code of practice that I just thought I'd chip into this. And so the government is really acting on this they understand that to keep the UK safe, we've got to keep all our businesses and all people safe. So from somebody setting up a company with Companies House, making them cyber aware, to opening bank accounts, to weaving in cybersecurity into everything we do, not as an add-on, a bolt-on, a nice to have. It's, you know, it's going to be like health and safety. So the government's doing a lot, I think, to help in this regard. But I think it's businesses shouldn't wait for it to be mandated and to be treated as compliance. They should be trying to be proactive in this regard, and we're here to help. So any other questions, Francis?
Yeah, there was another question. Where is it? Sorry, I'm just... Was there another question? Yeah, what are the governments doing about that? I've done the rules.
I think we're good on the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Louisa.
Oh, well, thank you both. That was really, really informative. I've learned lots, and there's things that I've been slack about that I need to sort out. So I'll be going through my phone right now with WhatsApp and that website as well. Have I been pulled? I have looked at that, but I haven't got it set. So I think that's a brilliant idea. So thank you so much. And there's so much we can do. That's been really, really wonderful. So thank you so much to you both for joining us, and thank you everyone for staying on. It's been fantastic. If you have got any questions you haven't had a chance to ask, do stay on right now so we can answer them just directly now. But otherwise, many thanks to you all. We'll see you soon. We're going to be back in the autumn for our Digital Lunch and Learn series. If you have got a topic you'd like us to cover, ping me a note, or if you're keen to speak yourself or know someone who'd like to speak as well, do get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you all. But enjoy the rest of your afternoons, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.